issues to our attention, and the police did recommend a council resolution be passed to evict those people, and it was done. And Marcel, I want to thank you for that. I just want to make sure that we don't go around, that nothing is being done, because when these situations happen, the police do bring it to the attention of council, and council is usually very quick to pass a resolution to evict people that are involved with those activities.
You don't have to tell them to do that.
Go ahead.
That's why I asked you if I could say something.
To everybody that came, and to those that are online watching, I've got to apologize for losing my cool. I grew up on the ice. That was a part of my job. It's hard to get away from just overnight, although it's I've been retired for a few years, but it's still in me as a person, I guess, whatever. I've got to learn to step back and take a deep breath and just stay cool. It's difficult. I'm going to tell you. For me, I wasn't a goal scorer. All right. I use my hands for other things, and it is difficult for me just to do that. But help from family and friends, you know, I have to do just that. Just take a deep breath, step back, and keep my cool. So please accept my apologies for losing my cool. You know.
If I may, really quick, can we just continue on with the meeting? Everyone that's here?
Okay, does
Can we
everybody
just
feel
get
safe to
through
carry on with the
the
meeting? Does
questions that are
anybody,
here?
I'd like a show of hands.
As a young person in the community, this is nothing that's outside of what I was expecting to see here tonight. Just, that's on both sides. I was asked to come here to do the opening, and obviously that didn't do no good. No one knows what I'm saying. And it doesn't mean anything, obviously. So if we can do one thing right, is just get through this agenda, I think.
Thank you very much.
Probably pretty good.
So the next item that was on the agenda that placed there by community members was an update on the Culberson track. So it's already been stated, the Simcoe deed was given to was granted to our people in 1793, April 1st, 1793. Which is really all the land in Tyendinaga Township that's now comprises Tyendinaga Township. And so there, in 1837, John Culberson's grandson, Captain John Deseranto's grandson, Culberson, was applied to the government for a fee simple deed for 923.4 acres of land. And he was given a fee simple deed, which means they treated it as though it was like any other land off the reserve. And so the council filed a claim in 1995, and the government did accept that claim for negotiation. Okay. Okay. Oh, yes, thank you. So we've had 2 community meetings. Surveys were completed a year and a half ago, but since that, there's been no update. We had a community meeting. Dan Brandt was a consultant hired. He came and presented the results of his survey. A total of 906 people responded, qualified that made it qualify as a legitimate service survey, and participants were from band numbers identified, date of birth, that sort of thing. Of the respondents, 65%, a total of 587, live away from the territory, while 32%, 286, are members currently residing on the territory. These are the people who responded to the survey. This represents 12.7% response rate. Response rate to typical clinical online surveys range between 5 and 30%. The question regarding 100% distribution of the funds, The on-territory response for equal distribution was 58.2%, and off-territory was 61.4%. This suggested that member sentiments on equal distribution with the surveyors were very close to being equal, whether on or off the territory. The question: what is the best use of the 299 acres of land that that makes up the partial settlement? There was an overwhelming response indicating that housing should be the priority for this property. Other suggestions for the use of the land range from building a casino, utilizing all the property for agriculture for purposes for citing food sovereignty. On Wednesday, August 27th, 2024, the council passed a motion to allocate a portion of the Culberson Tract settlement to members of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte. This was determined to be $1,000 would be distributed to each registered member of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte that was born prior to October 16th, 2021, the date of the ratification vote on the partial settlement. Anyone born or registered after October 16th will not be eligible for settlement funds. The council decided that reimbursements will be handled internally and the development of a work plan and strategy is currently underway. As work progresses, more information will be released to our members regarding the process and timeline to receive their check. Housing. Why is MBQ not offered long-term tenants housing? I guess that's not part of Culberson.
No, sorry, that was the end.
That was the end of it.
That's the end. So that's the high-level discussion on what's going on with the Culberson tract. So there's a work underway, but there's a trust agreement has to be developed because obviously there's minors and people have died and there may be estate issues, that kind of thing. So all that will be dealt with in that. Housing. Why is MBQ not offered long-term tenants on Huron-Brent Drive the opportunity to purchase their units? Housing and Band Property is reviewing the possibility of selling older rental stock through mortgages or other home ownership mechanisms like rent-to-own. The council approved a newly developed rent-to-own policy in 2020. However, prior to the implementation, council must also review and weigh the social impacts of selling homes during a housing shortage. The foundational intent of the rental program was to provide affordable housing option to members as they work towards a goal of home ownership, making it a stepping stone and ultimately providing a revolving, affordable, and rental opportunity for many other members. It is understood that home ownership, especially in today's housing market realities and prices, some may not be currently attainable or desirable for all. Currently, Housing and Band Property is reviewing options and approaches to reduce barriers to home ownership, including the potential through existing and new opportunities. The Housing and Band Property Department and Council are committed to further investigate this topic and will ensure that the process includes engagement with our current tenants and community as a whole prior to a final decision on the approach to this issue. Question: why does Council force long-term tenants to sign annual leases that mirror the leases of a new tenant just moving into a unit? The Housing and Band Property have worked with Council to eliminate the requirement within the MBQ rental unit policy that requires annual leases. If a lease is eliminated, a lease would turn into a month-to-month leasing arrangement after the 12 months that is typical in a rental industry. All provisions of the original lease and MBQ rental unit policy would still be in effect. However, the inconvenience of signing new leases would only be required when MBQ rental policy changes. The question: please explain the points or scoring system for rental unit selections. Please explain how the waitlist works. Presently, there is no scoring system for the current rental housing selection process. The point system that was historically used was changed to a time-stamped method in approximately 2013. The current system utilizes a two-stage process that includes the application intake and placement through a centralized waiting list. Requirement for applicants to be determined complete are as follows: confirmation the applicant is a member of the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte and 18 years or older, in good standing, meaning that they do not have any other arrears or debts owed to the band that have not been addressed through a debt recovery agreement, and that it's in good standing. Landlord references are considered. A satisfactory criminal reference check for all occupants over 18 years of age. Applicants will not be considered if any of the following offenses appear on any criminal reference check: first and second degree murder, sexual assault with a weapon, aggravated sexual assault, sexual interference, arson, drug trafficking, importing or exporting drugs, drug production, commission of an offense for a criminal organization, fraud over $5,000, and weapons trafficking and human trafficking. If anything of these turn up on the reference check, their rental application will not be approved. They have to have a fair credit score. Applicants with a credit rating that is less than fair will be placed on the waiting list. However, their score must meet the fair rating or show improvement prior to placement. Confirmation of household income is done. Once an application has been completed in full, the application placed on the central wait list based on time-stamped and unit eligibility. This means that when a vacancy is present, the oldest eligible application for the unit type is selected for placement. Final selections are now reviewed and approved by a newly formed Housing Selection Committee, which is comprised of 9 community members and 3 non-voting members, 2 housing staff, and the portfolio holder, which is now a wiry. Placement into a home is based on eligibility that is impacted by a few factors, which include household size. For example, MBQ rental policy requires compliancy to the National Occupation Standards, which states a maximum of 2 individuals per bedroom, and that members and households over 18 need to have separate bedrooms. Family members are assessed according to the following: a single or couple, childless, 1 or 2 bedroom unit, 1 to 2 children, 2 or 3 bedroom units, 1 to 2 children, opposite sex, minimum of 3 bedroom units, 3 or more children, unit, 3 bedroom unit. Affordability. MBQ has set rent, and unless a unit has been designated as a rent geared to income house, placement eligibility requires the applicant to meet the affordability for the vacant unit for the placement to occur. To calculate the affordability, MBQ uses 25% of the eligible household income. MBQ has recently increased our rental rates, and to assist with ensuring that they remain affordable have been tied to ODSP, monthly shelter allowance less $150. Below is the current rates broken down by bedroom. A 1 bedroom is $432, 2 bedrooms $765, 3 bedroom $840, 4 bedroom $924, 5 bedroom or $1,009. If 25% of a household's income or less the above rental amounts, the applicant would be required to be placed in a rent geared to income house. Example of scenario where the oldest application on file would not be replaced in the next available unit. Vacant unit is 2 bedroom full rate. These are examples I'm provided. The central wait list identifies the oldest applicant has 2 kids opposite sex, requiring a 3 bedroom full rate. A household income of $4,000 per month demonstrates an affordability of $1,000 a month, 25%. The second oldest application identifies an applicant with 1 kid, needing 2 to 3 bedrooms, and a household income of $3,000 or more demonstrates affordability of $750 a month. Third oldest application identifies an applicant with 1 kid, needing a 2-bedroom unit with a household income of $4,800 a month demonstrates an affordability of $1,200 a month. Although there are 2 applications older, they do not meet the selection criteria, which result in applicants 3 being offered the unit. Social priorities, designated units, designed units. MBQ does have a few units that offer priority placement for a designated demographic. These can include age 55, homeless, or at risk of homelessness, and by gender. On the Upper Slash Road and York Road triplexes, seniors 55 have self-identified as homeless or at risk of homelessness. Upper Slash Road and Norway's Road, seniors 55, women that are homeless or at risk of homelessness. At Asia Court, seniors are 55 or older. Elders Lodge, 55 or older. Housing. What does MBQ have planned for housing for younger single community members looking for housing? Seem to have housing for elders and families, but nothing for single or young community members looking to start out in life. Our youth are going away for schooling and have no housing available for them. And when they come home, there is a plan in place for the construction for multi-units and for our youth to return home. MBQ Housing and Ban Policy has been working within the Tyendinaga Mohawk Council to develop 3 new centralized housing developments. And if you drive by North Street, you'll see that there are 12 currently small house, 1-bedroom houses built there. 2 more will be there, so we're a total of 14. Sadie's Housing Development Phase 2, Huron Brant Housing Development Phase 3. The North Street Housing Development was recently completed and building construction has begun for the 12 1-bedroom units. The development has a total of 24 planned, 1-bedroom single detached homes and a triplex with 2 bedrooms units and a 22-unit apartment building that will be a mix of 1 and 2-bedroom units. It is anticipated that the building construction of 9 more 1-bedroom single detached homes will begin in 2025, along with a triplex. The apartment building is currently under design. After costs were secured by TMC through recent lobby efforts with Indigenous Services Canada and to work to secure necessary construction funding for the apartment building and remaining single detached houses will begin in early portion of 2025-26. While the timeline for securing these funds is currently unknown, it is the goal to initiate building construction in 26 and 27. A recent application has been submitted to CMHC to secure funding for the infrastructure phase for the Sadie's Housing Development Phase 2 and Huron Brant Development Phase 3. It is anticipated that the project announcements will be made shortly after the federal election, which is today. While there is no guarantee of success from this funding opportunity, the Housing and Ban Property Department and Council remain optimistic that our projects will be looked upon favorably and, if necessary, will continue to work with the Council to secure the necessary funding to allow construction of the infrastructure phases through other sources of opportunities. So one of the things that we have to build for the North Street is a sewage pumping station, and that's going to cost around $300,000. So we have lobbied the department for that project so that those units can be connected to the sewage system and water system within the town. Within Phase 2 of Sadie's Housing Development, there is space allocated for 2 22-unit apartments that will have a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, while Phase 3 on Huron Brant Drive will be slated for seniors housing, which will include 75 2-bedroom homes and 2 25-unit elders lodges. These new seniors housing will provide the Housing and Ban Property Department with the opportunity to relocate existing seniors 55 and older that are currently overhoused. This will result in freeing up some 2 to 3 bedroom homes for small and larger families without displacement of our elders. The Community Wellbeing Department is also currently engaging in the preliminary design stages for post-majority youth housing development. The goal of the project is to provide housing opportunities for the youth that has aged out of care, with 6 individuals' living spaces and centralized area for common spaces like a kitchen, on-site laundry, administration area for on-site supports and programming. This project is still in its early planning and development stages with a request for proposals for design services planned to be released in the spring of 2025. Housing question. What message is Chief and Council sending to the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte members and residents who pay their mortgage rent and yet allow others to not pay their mortgage and rent with no repercussions? The Housing and Ban Property Department is working collaboratively with the MBQ Finance Department, MBQ Social Services Envelope, and Council to develop a process that address both the historical and recent foreclosures in a fair, consistent, and socially responsible approach that will be intended to be placed accountability on homeowners while ensuring that we are providing adequate supports to help households that are experiencing financial instability and distress. This is a complex issue that requires sensitivity during a global housing crisis. And so the police, if we're going to evict somebody, the only thing that the police will act on is a court order to evict somebody, and that can cost us $10,000 to $20,000 to get a court order, because we do not have a landlord-tenant tribunal that operates on the reserve, and we do need a body like that to deal with these types of issues that might be more affordable, I think, to more administrative process, more conducive to a combined budget. General administration, what happens when workers who actively deny services to community members are identified? What happens to them? MBQ programs and services have policies that outline eligibility, criteria, compliance protocols, and program service limitations. If a community member is denied a service or program participation, the policies have an appeal process that the community members can use to discuss the decision within the program. And if the issue is not resolved by the appeal process, may escalate to the director and the chief administrative officer. Staffing and performance issues are addressed by the immediate supervisors and with support from the Human Resources Department, and outcomes remain confidential as per the requirements of the Canada Labour Code. Policing. We have not gone standalone for our police service yet. Whose portfolio is this? Currently, Ogwari has the policing portfolio holder. Want to just raise your hand, Ogwari, so they can see who you are? Okay, thank you. The community safety portfolio includes police, justice, fire, ambulance, and emergency preparedness. In 2021, the Chief and Council engaged Myers Norris Penny LLP, a consulting firm, to conduct the policing capacity needs assessment, to research First Nations policing programs and model options, and to provide an analysis of the First Nations policing models for the Chief and Council to use to decide which policing model is best in the best interest of the Tyendinaga Police Services and our community. Myers Norris Penny indicated that the stakeholder and community consultations showed resounding support to see the community transition and establish a self-administered policing model. In January 2023, Chief and Council submitted a letter as an expression of interest to the transition from the OPNPA to a self-administered policing model, and again engaged MMP to support the transition to a self-administered standalone policing service. The project has included developing criteria for a police board, member selection, within a selection process conducted in February 2024 for inaugural police services board, which named 5 members: Mike Hill, who's the chair, Don Armitage, Brent Dye, Denny Tompkins, and Joanne Tababadong as the Police Services Board. The board has been meeting since April 2024 for board training, policy development, identifying elements of the transition to ensure there is a strong foundation prior to the implementation of a self-administered service. Policing. How do you file a formal complaint about the police services at Tyendinaga, and what is the process to hear such a complaint? The first step is to submit your complaint to the Chief of Police, Jason Brandt, who will address the issue. The issue will be examined internally in an attempt to follow through to a resolution. If it's a criminal complaint against an officer, the police will turn it over to the OPP for investigation. The process can take up to 6 months or more to complete. Policing. How can the Tyendinaga Police take themselves off rotation to attend Mohawk language program while on active duty, getting full salary while leaving our community unprotected? How is this okay, and who approved it? The Chief Police Jason Brandt confirmed that this does not occur during active duty. It occurs after hours while the officer off duty, and so does not require approval. The officer is there to teach Tyendinaga, not to learn. The active involvement in an elementary element of the community policing should be considered a police enhancement to have a member of the Tyendinaga Police Service who is a Tyendinaga speaker and culturally aware is an asset. Policing. What measures is the council implementing to safeguard our community from Belleville Police violation of our rights as community members on the reserve? Chief Police Jason Brandt confirmed the Belleville Police have policing powers everywhere in Ontario, much the same way that our police do. Tyendinaga Police Service has a positive relationship with the Belleville Police. When there's reliance for support, open communication among police services keeps everyone informed of an arising situation. If Belleville Police enter the territory in an emergency situation in pursuit of a suspect who may be dangerous, this should be supported from a community safety perspective. Economic development. As per the audit presentation of March of 2023, it was stated that interest loan charges increased by approximately $500,000 for the solar project investments and approximately 300 for the project investment for the year. What process or policies have been developed to ensure the Mohawks avoid making investment that costs us money instead of making us money? All of MBQ's business ventures are producing positive investment returns for MBQ. Each MBQ business venture are using its own generated revenue services to service its own debt and operations with no requirement for cash infusion from MBQ funds. Each business venture is able to service its own debt that includes both interest and principal payments without the need of using MBQ community funds. Pay for its own operational expenses using its own funds generated from its operation. Provide MBQ with monetary benefits from its operation. The solar project gives MBQ $250,000 annually for the life of the power contract, the FIT contract. And the FIT contract came from the IESO, Independent Electrical Supply of Ontario agreement. They provided our input, so it came from Ontario, not band funds. And so that provides us with $250,000 a year. But a lot of the revenue is kept to pay for the debt servicing from the operation of that. It doesn't come from the band. The power contract will end in 2037, which the project will enter into another PPA to sell power. At the end of the contract, MBQ will have no more debt to service and will enjoy a partnership distribution of 50% of the income from the solar farm. The solar farm has a useful life till 2057. The wind project gives MBQ $50,000 annually for the life of the power, the FIT contract. The power contract will end in 2034, at which time we'll enter into another PPA to sell power. The wind farm has a useful life up to 2054. And currently the Independent Electrical Supply of Ontario has determined that Ontario must increase its electric generation capacity by more than 100% in order to facilitate growth and economic development in the province of Ontario. So there is an energy crisis as well. What steps are Chief and Council taking to ensure the Mohawks are economically independent and self-sufficient, less reliant on federal funding for services and program? When it comes to economic development, it doesn't happen by magic. If you don't invest any money, you can't expect any return. So rather than use community funds, we've committed to using the operation of a business. Sometimes we borrow funds from the partner, which is a higher interest rate. The band could borrow the money at a less interest rate, but it would tie up our credit capital, so the council doesn't do that. So they found another way to do it without using community funds and create a revenue stream for the band as well. What tangible steps are Chief and Council taking to ensure the Mohawks are economically development and self-sufficient instead of relying on federal funds? My view is that, Canada has taken a lot of our land and resources. They do owe us. And I don't consider that debt paid in full by any long shot. And so I think our future needs to be government grants as well as generating some of our own money. I don't think we have enough land and resources to become economically independent like a country. Working towards self-sufficiency is key. Mandate for the Chief and Council through investments and participation in renewable energy projects, both large and scale utility grade power projects and smaller community-based power generation projects. We are working both toward financial independence and also being able to provide ourselves with without outside reliance. And so many First Nations across the country have entered into partnerships to develop wind power, solar power, other means of generating power, and they do have revenue streams coming from that. So we're just one of those communities. There's 129 communities that are formed sovereign wealth, and so we have 14 million shares in Hydro One. When it was privatized, it's the 129 First Nations. So. And of course, the revenue paid the debt from the government of Ontario, gave a low interest rate to buy those shares. And now it's starting to raise dividends after 10 years. And some of that money will come back start to come to the communities. So that's another source of revenue.
Are these all outsourced?
Pardon me?
Are these all outsourced? Do we have anything statistics to be here?
No, these are shares in Hydro One. So that we have the chiefs across Ontario collectively, 129 communities own 14 million of those shares.
For the possibilities of being.
Well, right now, the ISO has identified that there needs to be a power transmission line built from Toronto to Ottawa. And so we raised it at Iroquois Caucus. Was there any possibility that the Iroquois communities could become owners of that transmission line to develop? But the thing about it, you can't just, the money doesn't appear by magic. You have to borrow it. And if it's not going to come from the communities, it has to come from somewhere. When you go to when it's a new corporation form, you're going to pay a higher interest rate. And so you can't have it both ways. So to avoid using community funds, they found different other financing mechanisms. Now, one of the priorities for the Infrastructure Bank of Canada is to support power generation applications, because right now in Ontario there is a shortage of hydropower going into the future. So that is a priority of both governments. So it was a preliminary discussion, so it still has to be evaluated if it's viable. And of course, we would hire experts and consultants to advise us on that.
Since we were talking about having possibilities of land that we've acquired, there are other pieces of land sitting around in Tyendinaga Township, for example, that we could have.
Yeah.
And possibly having looked into them by having our own committee to say, there's a piece that's not being put to use. It used to be ours, why can we not go after it?
Okay, so,
We can commit those pieces of property
okay,
to future use.
so we bought 185 acres of land where the golf course is in Marysville. And by the way,
Yeah.
that is the economic development. It did produce a profit. It pays all of its debts. It doesn't require funds from the community. The money generated pays a bank loan for both the purchase of the land and capital assets. And we've asked the federal government to reimburse us for the $1.2 million land price, because that land has been now accepted for negotiation. It's been filed for claim.
300 acres that are sitting adjacent to it.
Well, again, as it becomes available for sale, the policy of the government is willing seller, willing buyer. And we've talked with the government about a land reclamation fund, so that the band would have the funds to buy that land, so we wouldn't have to wait on a federal decision, which could take years, because then we would lose the opportunity to buy it. And right now, there is a lot of income, a lot of money in those wallets that travel back and forth between Toronto and Montreal. And if there was a business that's located along I think there's an opportunity for the band to make money. The reserve, some of the reserves in other places have these kinds of service centers, and they make money. And that, by the way, is the busiest highway in Canada between Toronto and Montreal.
But that federal funding is still in the works. There isn't a number yet.
So, but we do have land, there's surplus land that's part of the 185 acres. So all of the 185 acres is not used for golf course. And so there is a possibility it would be under development and evaluation.
This, but there is that someone around 300 acres
Yeah.
sitting between Wyman's Road and has been up for sale before. I don't know what current standing is. That was a viable possibility.
Yeah, the council, those decisions are made by the council. But again, we just heard tonight, there should be consultation with the community on that. So that the council will take that under discussion. So our purchase of the Briar Box Golf Course is providing both these. Our upcoming long-term care facility will also provide jobs, over 100 jobs. And by the way, I chaired the Chiefs Committee on Long-Term Care, and we were able to raise 80 million of the 80 million of the 183 million that were needed. So the band shares only 3 million, and I've raised through corporate partners a little over $1 million. There's 706,000 left invested for any future needs of the long-term care, and it'll create over 100 jobs. FNTI is currently training personal support workers and registered practical nurses to get a job there. So if people want a job, take the training, and there's an employment opportunity in the community. And there's been a number of positions for increased employment with MBQ, and I believe also at FNTI. And of course, then you have the other convenience stores and businesses.
Actually being paid on the Mohawk property
golf course, Garysville?
Yes, we have to pay taxes there until it's converted to reserve land, because that's part of the 1824 surrender, the surrender of 1820. And so there's 5,200 acres of land that's currently,
Originally our land, and is our land, why are we paying taxes?
because we have to go through the federal process to have it confirmed as part of our land. It doesn't happen just because we bought it. There's a process. Well, no, actually, we had a very positive discussion with the government at our meeting on February the 7th, and so we'll have an update on that at a future meeting. So how does Chief and Council justify $25,000 per acre in the industrial when community funds were used to purchase 20 acres at 1.45 million, working out to 72,000 an acre? So there was a developer from Toronto that owned 20-acre parcel land between the property that I don't know if it's owned by Sean Brandt or somebody, but his family was a former Denny Tompkins building there. North of that, there's 20 acres. Then north of that is the 299.43 acres of land that's part of the Culberson settlement. And so MBQ bought this application, and the developer decided to sell it. He originally wanted $1.8 million. We were able to bring him down to 1.45. But we could have been engaged in protests and lawsuits and all kinds of things, and the federal government pulling the plug on negotiations like they did before. And so it was cheaper. We thought it was in the best interest to secure that land, so the council decided to use some of the interest off of the Culberson land claim investment, which is currently earning interest at the Bank of Montreal. And so then we've asked this will be requested by the federal government to pay us back the purchase price of that land and to pay us loss of use. So there are calculations that have to be done yet. And so we recently have had an economist provide us with a report on loss of use for the Shannonville property. And we were looking at using the proxy model to look at the loss of use for the golf course and the 20 acres, and plus the reimbursement of the purchase price. And this has happened before. So we've had a positive discussion with the department. It needs to be worked on, but if we work through the process, we can get results. And council did not want to lose the opportunity to confirm illegality surrendered land to the reserve to make way for much needed housing development. On May the 28th, 2024, the council passed a motion to use the interest off of the Culberson partial settlement to purchase this parcel of land to get reimbursed by Canada at a later date. MBQ is in the process of discussing this reimbursement with the purchase of Canada, and this is in keeping with the community mandate for land reclamation. Governance. What committees are in operation under council and their respective portfolios? What powers or responsibilities do they have? And why are these committees not made public? So I guess if the council just wants to speak to your portfolios, then please go ahead. Erin, do you want to start?
Sure. So there was previously an education committee. Over the years, it became not what it originally had been created for. So it was no longer functioning. There weren't attendees. So that has folded currently, and the intent is to create parent involvement committees for all of the education facilities that our students attend. So that is in the process. They are public. All of the current committees that we have on council are public, and they're posted in the community letter and Facebook, and majority of them are actively looking for volunteers. So if anybody is interested, look on the social media there. They're on there. Who would be next? Just want me to keep going?
20 acres that was purchased. Who made the decision to purchase those 20 acres using the people's money without permission? Who did that?
The Mohawk Council, as I stated before, passed a resolution on May the 28th to buy it, to not lose the opportunity to buy it because there was a mandate for land reclamation. If they hadn't done it, a developer from Toronto could have developed that, and then the cost could have been sky high. We would have never been able to get it back.
I own those 20 acres valued at $30,000. The present value on it is $60,000. And now you pay 1.45
Okay,
million
we had
acres of land.
we had the land appraised.
My top was a Shan Bash who got money. He was going to build 60 homes there, had approval by the town to build the homes there on our land. Now, we bought that land for 1.45 million with money that belonged to the people that the people were never asked. Just like you sued Sean Grant on behalf of all the Mohawks for Bay of Quinte. There's not one person in here you asked. Not one. Now, the 1.45 billion that's being spent out of our money that wasn't approved, are you paying taxes on it?
The council will pay taxes on it, but we are asking the federal government to reimburse us all of our
Oh,
expenses,
really?
yes.
The Culberson Land Tract, we're paying taxes on our land that's been established, that they gave us $31 million in lost income for 299 acres.
They said,
Why isn't that 299
because we have,
acres being
because,
used?
because the
Now,
federal
why
government,
aren't there roads in there and homes being built on there for our people? Why not?
because,
Because what?
because, listen, please.
Because what?
Listen, please. Because we have to go through the addition to reserve process to confirm that it's reserve land, but all of those expenses will be recovered once in another agreement, once we go through that process. That's the only process that the federal government has to
That's
use.
not acceptable.
It does, there is no instant magic.
That's not acceptable for the people.
Then we
To
can
do
go,
something
we can
that
go to
people
court
don't
then.
know anything about.
We can go to court and we'd be there maybe it wouldn't even be settled in our lifetime and spend thousands and thousands of dollars of ad money to go through a process where we can sit down and negotiate and go through the addition to reserve process and get it done much quicker and cheaper. And unfortunately, the process is not ours. It's a federal process, but we have to work within that process to make it happen. That's as simple as that. The law and the policy of the federal government is not the way we'd like it to be. We agree with that, but it's not instant. And so we are keeping track of the taxes we're paying on it, and we will be expecting Canada to reimburse all of those expenses with interest, and it'll be a sizable claim.
So who made the decision to purchase the?
I told you, the council on May the 28th, I told you, Clifford, on May the 28th, the council passed, this present council made a motion to buy it, to secure it, to not allow the developer, and actually the town of Deserona did not give approval, and neither did Hastings County. So the developer went to the Ontario Land Tribunal to see if they could get them to approve it. And so we could have fought them there, and the developer decided to sell it to the
He
band.
had approval from the town.
He didn't.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't, Clifford.
We checked
He
with them.
didn't.
That's why he was at the Land Tribunal, because he didn't get approval of the town or the Hastings County Council. That's why he went to the Land Tribunal.
And he got approval.
He didn't get approval.
I just want to say I am really appreciative of everybody coming out and the answers you guys are trying to provide. I know that we've had a little bit of static tonight, but the reality is we haven't come together in a really long time. So I feel like this is a really good step to some transparency. There's a lot of people that have said that they're upset that there's not actual community involvement in some decisions. Council has said that that's something that they want to take a look at. Chris has made a commitment and talked about the fact that community meetings are going to move on. And I really think it's important that we all figure out, we all have invested interest in this. We all want our children to have safe places, but we also all have issues. We all have individual issues, but we also have community issues. And some of that was brought up today, and there was a lot of information that was provided today that a lot of people don't know. So we've been hearing partial things, and that gets people upset. There's been a lot of information given today, and I just really want to thank you guys for showing up, because I can't imagine that it's easy to show up to a community meeting, especially when all of the things are being posted on social media or people say things about you, including me. So I'm not saying it's not me, including me. So I just want to say thank you very much for showing up, being accountable. And I am very interested to hear questions, but I'm also very interested for the next community meeting where I would like to see things like a title about taxation, a title about alcohol, because that's what's come up here from the people. So I'm really hopeful, and thank you very much.
Hey,
Thank you for those words. If I might reiterate a little bit on what Clifford, the 20 acres that come up, somebody else was going to buy it. Now, look at it this way. This is a part of the Culbertson tract that hasn't turned over to us yet. Yet there is somebody else that is a member that wants to buy it for their personal use. So council didn't want that to happen. They wanted to purchase that quick. So one single person didn't get that land, but the council gets it and keeps it in the community. And we had talked about before about having meetings with the federal government in Ottawa. Actually, it was in Gatineau, but the possibility of having this amount for potential land that is just all of a sudden somebody wants to sell their land, which is also a part of the Culbertson tract, and to keep those individuals that have the money taking that, let's say 100 acres comes up for sale, and instead of a single person with money jumping on and buying 100 acres, the band can buy that on behalf of the community and keep it as the Culbertson tract, getting reimbursed by the government.
Grant had that property developed by Shan Bash, the Bash Industries, it would have been worth over 60 to $100 million, which the government would have owed us. So the government wanted that.
Not owned us,
1.1
own him. One.
Following procedure.
Yeah, can I say something, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but community members want to be heard, and when we have a community member, there's a few that dominate the meeting. And so we need to give everybody a chance, and the community members did put these items on the agenda. We're trying to address what community members put on the agenda. Go ahead, Colleen.
As you know, as you may or may not be aware, I was the lands officer with MEQ about 3 years ago, and I was there for about 7 years. So I just want to inform you that I myself did a process while working there myself. The band itself, the reserve, we hold about 18,500 acres of land. Approximately, it might be a little bit more than that, but that's without the Kimmett property that's coming back. Okay, and of that, according to the 2020, I'm just gonna say late 2000 capital plan that was done by MEQ, about 90% of our land is held in CP. So individual members hold that property. The band itself only holds about 10% common land. You probably aren't aware of that. And the people that I have talked to, I've told them that. So with that 10% of common land, we might have, I didn't really statistically put it in there, rough guesstimate, possibly about 3 to 5% of that land is usable. And that's common land. That is communal land. So we take a look at, we've got properties such as your school, such as the cemetery, such as the churches, such as the swamps. A lot of that is not usable land. So you take that into factor. Us as a people don't have a lot of land, but yet you're wanting them to build. My next suggestion to council is when you're looking at building houses, stop putting them all over the place.
Yeah.
Stop it. You started building up in Shannonville. Finish that first. Started Sadie's Lane. Finish that. Quit putting them all over the place when we don't have the usable land. You're talking about Culbertson tract. Personally, I said, leave it as is, lease it out, keep it cut down. Let's leave it for our future. What are we leaving for our future generations if we're going to build? Because I know in land, I'm looking at some of this stuff, I go, what were they thinking back then? But again, it was the way the thought process was. You gotta think outside of the box when you're planning. And your one step to planning is getting a land use plan done here. We do not have one. I tried, it got so far, that's it. Amy is trying now. That will involve the community as a whole to have input into that. But we have to be positive because everything starts with lands. And we're leaving lands out of the picture. Okay, so we have to stop. Let's start working together. Let's be proactive. Let's not be reactive. And I've said that many times. Just a little bit, I'm still passionate about lands, although I've moved on. I'm helping across Canada now. So let's use our resources that we have here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the information, Colleen. Like a lot of the members, a lot of the community does not know that, and we are not just building future housing projects on just open land. We are going to finish Sadie's in our future. We are going to use the subdivision or the little subdivisions. We are going to finish them off to their potential.
Just, sorry, just to jump in here too, to be respectful of everybody's time. I know that we put on our meeting that it would end at 9, and I don't want anybody to feel like they have to stay or they're going to miss anything. So if everybody here is okay with continuing, we can continue, but if you'd like to have the last couple of things that are on this agenda added onto our next agenda, we can absolutely do that as well.
Most of the questions for housing were mine. So I just had some.
Go ahead.
I had some follow-up questions because could you tell me again, if you don't sign a lease, it just goes month to month? Is that correct?
Well, that still is under discussion yet with the council.
Pardon?
It still is under discussion with the council.
It's only because I've rented my unit, our unit, for 20 years. I was the one asking about ownership. And I'm aware of why the land was sold to MBQ because my grandfather sold it to the MBQ. And I'm asking about the lease because we have not signed a lease, I think 2016, I think. Maybe I asked for a record of it, they sent it, I think. But anyways, we had no maintenance done to our unit. We actually had Chris present a letter. It was like a 6 to 8 page letter that he presented to council, which resulted in, it did get resolved. We got a registered apology letter from Tom Crane, which then 2 weeks later got a follow-up letter saying if we didn't sign a lease, we would be forfeiting our unit, which that unit, like I said, we've rented for 20 years and we've raised our 4 children in it. So that unit is our home. And so, and then we get letters saying if that didn't work, then we wouldn't be qualified for the incentive that is put forward, that if you pay your rent or your mortgage on time every month, then you get December rents for free.
And have you qualified? Have you been getting it?
I did. I just ignored the letters of threat. And
Okay.
we're getting them this time. So
Yeah.
my question is, do you think that it's okay to force long-term tenants to sign leases under distress, under the thought that they're going to lose their home?
After 15, 20 years.
20 years of renting, you can
Okay.
look it up.
It's not just the rent, it's about the conditions of renting the house, like to not damage it,
You can look at my,
to not have other occupants there and overcrowding.
I followed every.
And so there needs to be some kind of understanding between people who are occupying our houses. And so normally those conditions have been in the lease. Otherwise, we can end up in unresolvable disputes if it's just all based on paying rent. There's more to it than that. It's about harboring dogs, any kind of criminal activity. So when it's all put in writing, then both parties then have an understanding of what their obligations are.
But I've rented this unit for 20 years.
Yeah.
Why am I, like, there's not the same amount of money has went into my unit that goes into a unit. It gets trashed and re-gutted and re-renovated like 4 times in a year.
Okay.
I'm still like, I literally had the tub doctor come. I have an original tub. I'm in one of the original units with the original tub, and they sent the tub doctor to paint my tub. But to paint the tub,
40 years old, you painted
painted a tub.
rightfully so, you should own it.
I really,
It's disgusting to hear this, if you don't own this property. We have lived there for 40 years. All right, you know, you've lived down there.
Yeah.
You know what we feel.
Okay,
and so I followed the procedure and I sent my question, and, you know, it's really disheartening when I get a registered apology letter and then 2 weeks later get a slap in the face. And a lot of the time, like, we don't even get replies, and I heard a timestamp. I got that load of crap handed to me by Tom Crane so many times. Don't
Okay,
worry,
what is your
repair's
address?
gonna be timestamped. Timestamped.
20 Huron Brant Drive South?
Yes. 40.
Well, 40, okay, the policy is that the housing are supposed to have 2 inspections a year. And then if there's repairs needed, they're supposed to get on it. We do give them a repair budget, and so it's left up to the staff to
Okay,
manage
what
it.
I'm telling you is that clearly didn't happen, and it was acknowledged it didn't happen with the registered apology letter. So my question is,
So
do
are
I
you-
have to be fearful of being ejected from my home, not my unit, my home that I've rented for 20 years?
Okay, so-
Because I'm not signing a lease that's pretty much exactly the same lease I signed in 2018.
So anyway,
So anyway,
anyway, normally if there isn't a lease, leases have a beginning date and an ending date. That's what forms the contract. They don't run on indefinitely. And so then they have to be reviewed, and if
You
there's
just
any
said you
changes
don't have
to the
to
policy
sign
or
it.
rent, then that has to be put into writing in the agreement, because rent is not going to stay the same forever.
and that's fine.
And so anything is going to change, there has to be a written agreement between the landlord and the tenant, so they know what the obligations are. But we currently have 210 rental properties, 196 on the wait list. So I'm sure if those houses became available for sale, a lot of people would want to buy them. And we'd have the same
But
situation.
my situation is different. How many people do you have in the subdivision that have rented their unit for 20 years?
There's a number of them, a fair number of them.
How many?
I don't know the exact number. I don't,
Not a lot. Not a lot.
So-
I think the next session of council, they ought to vote to give this woman the property. Give it. No charge.
I want to go that far. I just want to own my home. Like, and my grandfather, the ironic part is
so
my
there are
grandfather
still- there are
sold the
still
land
repairs
so
that-
that people could own homes.
so there are still repairs outstanding at 40 Huron Brant South that have not been dealt with.
They are being dealt with. That situation is like Greg General. I give him props, and Chris, the counselor Chris, he went to bat for us. He sat with me, listened to our complaints. He came to our unit. He's seen the stuff that wasn't done. He can vouch that it's a good unit, that we take care of it.
Okay,
But it's frustrating. Every year I don't want to get a threatening letter and have to fear that I'm going to get evicted because I'm not signing a lease.
okay, can I have your name, please?
Samantha,
Samantha? Oh, Harold was your grandpa?
yeah,
That's who we bought the land from?
yeah, Doc,
Yeah,
Harold
Doc,
Senior,
remember?
yeah.
Yeah, we bought that land from him many
I'm
years
very
ago.
aware. I grew up learning hearing about that all the time, so it's a little bit ironic that I'm here
Yeah,
saying, hey, can I have a piece of my family land back? Can I buy it back?
okay. Thank you very much, Samantha.
Consider me at the podium, but I have something to say. In able to buy land from the band here, your name has to be Tony Bildall. I tried to buy native flour from the band, and they refused to sell it to me. I offered them $10,000, which they were asking, they wouldn't sell it to me. Then I offered to buy where the Edsel station is, and they wouldn't sell that to me. Now I'm trying for the last 6 months to buy another piece of property from the band, and I get a letter from the band telling me when the band decides to sell people we'll notify them. But apparently the only one that gets notified is Tommy Bildall.
Well, first of all, Clifford, I'd like, Can I tell you that where the Esso station, that land never belonged to the band. That was Chief Earl Hill and Lorraine's personal certificate of possession property. When it was willed to their heirs decided to sell it to Tom Bildel. That's beyond our control.
Sorry, with a little bit of rambling there, you didn't actually answer my question. So will I, if I don't sign a lease, am I not eligible for the incentive for December?
I would have to check on the policy because normally if the rent is paid on time, all the time, you can qualify.
It is paid on time, but the new
Has someone told you you're not
posting,
gonna
the
get
new
this?
post states,
Has-
if you don't sign the lease, then you're not eligible for
And
the
you have been
incentive.
provided writing from the staff to that effect?
It's on their social media page.
Oh. We shouldn't be discussing dealing with the band members through social media.
It's the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte social media page.
Can I get, what's your phone number? We'll have to get back to you on that.
Well, I'm not gonna give it to you online.
We've got it. We've got it.
They got it at work? Okay, good. So can we make sure we look into that and get back to her, please? The staff will get back. My apologies.
All good.
The next issue is governance. That's going to take quite a while, and it is after 9. And so I think we need to bring this meeting to close and put these other items on the other. But I can tell you the committees of council, there's the Parks and Recreation Committee that's functioning. There's a Housing Selection Committee that's functioning. There's a Library Committee and an Arena Committee. There were other committees that had been struck, but the members who were on those committees didn't show up to have meetings, and so they just sort of fizzled out. So if you're going to get on a committee, make sure you have the time to commit to it and attend the committee meetings to do the work. Otherwise, it doesn't pan out. Then council's waiting for information, but council's time is very, very busy because part of my job is to lobby for money. And if we don't have money, things are not going to get done. And I'm going to tell you, the money that we need is in the millions of dollars.
I just want to, a note is that we're trying, and we are new, like, I mean, we've been here for almost going on a year and a half, but I mean, it's just scratching the surface as to what there is to learn. I mean, sometimes it's way over my head. Like I played hockey. I don't have a great education, but I'm learning as best as I can. We're putting it out to the community at all the time for different things, and I'm pleased to say that we were looking for the community's help in anybody that wanted to sit on an arena design committee, and we have, is it 11 or 13?
I think there's 17.
17. We have 17
more.
community members that have put their names in to sit on this arena, and it is not an ice arena. It will be a lacrosse arena for our game. I feel, and it is my sport, that an ice arena, it takes way, way, way too much money to run.
Okay.
So, but anyway, I'm pleased to say that we have 17 people that are going to be sitting on the community. So we are trying to involve the community a little bit more than maybe in the past. So, but we're starting. Please bear with us, and it's just one step at a time.
No, just the Culberson, we didn't finish that discussion, but anyway, the Culberson bank account has $28,706,825.46 in it. When we get reimbursed by the 1.45 million for the purchase of that 20 acres, that will go back in there. And because we were not consulted on the opening of that quarry, the province was paid $300,000. It's now, the bank balance for that is $352,504.99. So the money's being invested, it's earning interest. Tamara?
Yeah, I just have a question about the committee. I was just wondering why a non-Indigenous person is sitting on one of our committees and making decisions on what our people can and can't do with the
Okay,
land.
there was a motion passed by council to approve the names that were put forward.
The current policies of MBQ are that any community member could sit on the committees of council. So a community member being living in this community. So that's what the current policy is.
Okay, but like they can't hold title to land, they can't vote in our councils. So like, why can they make the decision for where our people can and can't?
Yeah. So they ideally don't make decision alone, but in a lot of these cases, these community members also have Indigenous kids that go here too, or are married to a status partner and have status children. And a lot of the time is just, it's giving another perspective to the committee to consider when they're thinking of how they're evaluating them. But there is policy, and it would all be through policy. So there would not be one individual person saying, like, having any sort of say over anything.
Okay, Chris?
Just for the record too, it's not unanimous. These decisions are not always unanimous. I was adamantly opposed to a non-native having a seat over a Mohawk, a full-blooded Mohawk. I was accused of being a racist, having something against non-natives. And I said, have we learned nothing in 500 years? But we give our power away? Have non-natives deciding which Mohawks can live in Mohawk-owned houses? And Mohawks, full-blood Mohawks, all lived here, and they were left off of that list.
Yeah, I had reached
And I'm
out.
accused of being a racist.
I had reached out to see what the process was, and there's not even an interview process. So how do you select people for a committee and know that they're qualified to be on that committee without actually interviewing them and knowing that they are, you know?
Did everyone that applied not get on that committee?
Yes.
Yes.
There
No,
was
that's
one
not true, Chief.
oversight.
committee.
They're saying yes, but it's not true.
There was one oversight that was mistakenly missed, and they were invited to participate after. So there was one mistake that was made.
Okay, so are there going to
Reinvited.
be policy changes then?
I
Like interview
think-
process,
Yeah,
everything?
all of those things are
I
great
think it-
suggestion.
I think it would be a great idea. Then we know
Absolutely.
that people are going to be committed to the committee and not show up because you're doing your due diligence
Absolutely.
to make sure that they are, properly vetted to be on these committees. So, and that may take away from people not showing up and committees folding. So maybe a change in process of how these committees are selected might help bring more people in.
Totally. Good suggestion.
Thank you.
The other thing I want to tell you, just to caution, sometimes when there's funding available, there's not a lot of time to make decisions. And so we can have community members and talk about it till the cows come home. Meanwhile, the deadline to apply for whatever funding is there will come and go, and the MBQ will miss out the opportunity because we're bogged down in community debate. And so if we're going to take advantage of opportunity, sometimes we have to make some pretty quick decisions.
I just found the post on MBQ's website or for Facebook page saying that if you did not sign by April 1st, you will not be in good standings for the rental incentive.
Okay. Well, the council will put it on the agenda for discussion. That's all I can tell you at this stage. So Shelley, could you make sure that goes on the next council agenda, please? Thank you.
And we're going to swap numbers, right? And you're going to keep in touch with me like you said?
Well, I've asked the staff to follow up on it, and
You have to forgive me. I've had a lot of rainbows and sunshines blown up my ass the last few years when it comes to band and council, chief and council, when it comes to housing. So I just want to make sure that I'm actually going to get an answer this time.
if you don't get an answer, I'd like you to call me.
I'll meet you for coffee.
Okay, just come to the office and make an appointment with my assistant Charles, and we'll talk about it, and I'll bring the staff in to find out why.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. So anyway, Colleen?
I just have one last comment, just as I hear people talking. Just going through, I guess, the work in that. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I know it's hard. I know 2 years isn't long enough, and they're done it a number of years ago. It is a learning process for sure. So thanks for having this meeting. Just reiterating what was said earlier. We also have to be aware that when we elect, or whoever in the community elect chief and council, they have a fiduciary responsibility. Okay? If you approach one of the counselors, they cannot make a decision. It has to go back to the table. They have to make it as a whole. So keep that in mind. Whoever's watching or here. So you can take your concerns to them, but just know they have to span it out amongst all of them. So they have to come to their own conclusion and their own decisions as a whole. Chief is the tiebreaker, just so you know. He doesn't make all the decisions. It's
I
your
don't very
councilors
seldom make a decision. I
that
make
your
recommendations.
decisions, So he's the tiebreaker.
Yeah, thank you. And like we said before, and I was talking to Kenny on the telephone, and I invited him to come. Let's meet up and let's discuss. We're always open to take a telephone call. You know, meet up with you to hear what you have. But like Colleen had said, it has to whatever you're discussing, let's say with myself, I have to take it back for the rest of the council, for the council to decide. But we still are ears and a voice out amongst the community members or everybody. Okay.
So I want to apologize for the disruption that we've had tonight here at council, especially with the young people. Hana Ganarakta gave us an opening where we're supposed to bring our minds together in a manner of respect and peace, and to temper our comments so that we're talking with a good mind for the benefit of the community. And so we need to set a good example for the younger people on how to conduct ourselves at a meeting. So I'm going to ask Ganarakta now to come forward as we have adjournment, and then we'll have adjournment to do the closing prayer.
And on Tony or and got me was on dad. I got in a Gina Hod, Gina near Evoke, then what can is up. Dagadi ne Tony or and a guego, nene into what's not Nedanya, Nani Gina Hod, on what with the word if I geared. And engineer net tot gum some goya decent. And then she do waharage, sego, nene I do a quisrunje. And I do away and that name gordy hold or now and Neon engineer just scana I don't know Danuhage or Honda one is red than younger. And Dane or in a tights in Horado, Nene Ginny Hardy, Nene Ganto, Nene Wahunda Nakto Tasse, Scotney died the Huntarunia. Neon in a I do already what Nega say, Nene Aguego Scana, and the what a jar to it, Gino and Eddie Guasquaharunia. Dagadi Tony or in any what given in a gun, Neon in a gun horror don't or a gascave. Took it now to name what Nagora, done it to.
Nyawako. So we'll have a motion then to adjourn this meeting.
No, we don't have to. It's not.
Okay, the meeting stands adjourned.